He was just a kid. But the moment his tiny fingers touched that grand piano, everything changed. It was a normal Saturday afternoon at Atlanta Ridge Mall, the kind of day where nobody really looks up from their phone. The air buzzed with energy. Shoppers rushed past one another, hands stuffed with bags. Kids screamed and tugged at their parents. Teenagers laughed loudly near the food court. There were smells of pretzels, fried chicken, cinnamon rolls, and the usual noise of daily life. And right in the middle of it all stood a piano. A black grand piano. Polished. Elegant. Out of place, yet somehow inviting. It had been placed there as part of a public art project. A sign on it read, "Play me. Inspire someone today." Most people just walked by. Some stopped to snap a selfie. Others let their kids bang on it for fun. But no one really played it. Until he showed up. A young black boy, no older than 11 or 12. He was small. Thin. Dressed in clothes that didn't quite fit. A worn-out hoodie and shoes 2 sizes too big. He moved slowly. Deliberately. One hand slightly raised, like he was feeling the air. Like he couldn't see what was around him. Because he couldn't. The boy was blind. His eyes didn't lock onto anything. They wandered. Aimless. Empty. But his face? His face held something powerful. Something quiet. A mix of fear and hope. People noticed. Some stared. Others turned away. 2 teenage girls nearby whispered, "Wait, is he gonna try and play?" Another teen, slouched against a wall, laughed and muttered, "What's he gonna do with that? He probably thinks it's a toy." A few people pulled out their phones, not to record something beautiful, but to catch a moment they thought would be awkward. Maybe even funny. The boy reached the piano bench. He paused. His hands moved across the surface, gently feeling the wood. He seemed unsure. Like he was asking the piano for permission. Then, he sat down. Silence fell. It wasn't complete silence. The mall was still full of noise. But something had shifted. A strange tension. A collective curiosity. And then, something else happened. He smiled. Just a little. The kind of smile that says, "I've waited for this moment my whole life." He lifted both hands, slow, steady, and placed them softly on the keys. 1 breath. 2. And then he played. At first, it was just a single note. Soft. Tentative. Almost like a whisper. Then another and another. And within seconds, a melody began to form. Not random banging. Not childish tapping. No. This was music. Real, flowing, emotional music. The boy's hands danced with a kind of grace that didn't make sense. He couldn't see the keys. He had never had a formal lesson. He had never owned an instrument. But what he played sounded like something only a soul with pain and purpose could create. People stopped. Some of the same folks who had laughed earlier now stood still. Their phones still out, but no longer to mock. Now, to capture.
A mother nearby gently pulled her daughter close. An elderly man in a baseball cap closed his eyes, swaying to the tune. Even a security guard took a step closer, unsure if he should intervene or stand in awe. And that teenager who had smirked before? He lowered his phone. His eyes were wide. His mouth slightly open. "Yo, what is this kid?" Because in that moment, everyone knew. This wasn't normal. This wasn't luck. And it definitely wasn't a toy. This was a gift. One the world had almost walked right past. But this? This was just the beginning. Because what Eli, yes, that was his name, would do next would not only silence the crowd. It would shake the internet. And change his life, forever. The boy's name was Eli. And believe it or not, he had never taken a single piano lesson in his life. He had no teacher. No books. No music sheets. No expensive academy. Not even a real keyboard at home. In fact, Eli had never truly seen a piano. Not that he could. Because Eli was born blind. But he had felt one. Just once. It was about a year ago. At a small, run-down church shelter on the east side of town. There was an old upright piano in the corner, dusty, out of tune, mostly ignored. But for some reason, that day, one of the volunteers noticed Eli tapping quietly on a cardboard box. And they smiled, walked him over, and said, "Go ahead, touch it." Eli's hands trembled as he reached out. He gently ran his fingers along the smooth keys, black and white, side by side. It lasted maybe 15 seconds. That's all. No one thought much of it. But Eli never forgot. That sound. That feeling. It stayed with him. It lived in his dreams. It whispered to him in the quiet. It became his imaginary friend, his private world. Eli had never known a normal home. He grew up in foster care. Bounced from house to house. Labels followed him: special needs, disabled, too quiet, hard to place. He was abandoned at birth. No mom. No dad. No one ever showed up on visiting day. And over time, Eli learned something heartbreaking. He wasn't expected to be seen. Or heard. He was invisible. But there was one thing. One beautiful thing that never left him. Music. It was his light in the darkness. His secret language. His hope. While other kids played video games, Eli tapped rhythms on the side of his bed. He drummed on lunch trays at school. He hummed in perfect pitch, even though no one taught him how. And thanks to the small, donated phone his social worker gave him, Eli discovered something magical. YouTube. Hours and hours of sound. Videos of pianists, orchestras, tutorials. Eli would lie awake at night, earbuds in, listening, rewinding, memorizing. He couldn't see the screen. But he didn't need to. He listened to the names of the keys. C. D. E. F. Major chords. Minor chords. He mapped them all in his head. He imagined what it would feel like to press them. What it would sound like if he played them. He even began to compose, in his mind, melodies that no one had ever heard. But he had never touched a piano again. Not once. Not since that shelter moment a year ago. Until today. When Eli walked into that mall. He wasn't looking for a piano. He wasn't looking for a crowd. He wasn't trying to go viral. He just heard something familiar. A sound, floating above the noise. A piano, not being played well, but enough to wake something inside him. And he followed it. Guided only by his ears. And his heart. And when he found it. When his hand brushed against the cool edge of the piano bench. He knew. This was his moment. The world may not have seen him before. But today. The world would hear him. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. He took a breath. Placed his hands gently on the keys. And then. He played. Not random noise. Not banging or fumbling like some expected. He played a full piece. At first, it was soft. Delicate. A flowing melody. Almost like a whisper from the past. It was a bit shaky, sure, but it was beautiful. Painfully beautiful. The kind of sound that makes people stop mid-step. The kind of music that slips past your ears and goes straight to your soul. And people did stop. Mothers pushing strollers. Teenagers on their phones. Even a little boy licking an ice cream cone. They all stopped. Turned. Listened. The crowd that had laughed before? They weren't laughing now. They froze. Eyes wide. Mouth slightly open. Like they couldn't believe what they were seeing, or hearing. Phones slowly came out. Some began filming. Others just watched in stunned silence. Even the mall security guard, who had been eyeing the piano earlier, ready to send the kid away. He leaned on the railing. Forgot his job for a moment. Because something was happening here. Something extraordinary. Eli's fingers moved with a quiet confidence, like they weren't following notes on a page. But feelings in his chest. Every note had emotion. Every pause had purpose. And then, as if something inside him opened, Eli shifted. He stopped playing the Mozart piece. And he began something new. Something his own. No one recognized it. Because no one had heard it before. It was an original. Something he had imagined in the dark, lying in bed, with nothing but the sound of his own heartbeat for company. It was sad. But it was full of hope. Like a story of someone who had fallen, but refused to stay down. The melody rose and fell like waves. People weren't just watching, they were feeling. A woman in the front row put her hand over her mouth. Tears welled up in her eyes. Next to her, a man took off his baseball cap, held it to his chest, and whispered. Lord have mercy, that's from heaven. Parents held their kids a little closer. One man knelt down to record, almost in reverence. And that teenager. The one who had laughed the loudest earlier. He was recording now too. But this time. His hands were shaking. He couldn't look away. This is crazy, he whispered to no one in particular. This kid's a genius. Eli kept playing. Eyes closed. Body still. Only his fingers moved, weaving together joy and sorrow, pain and possibility. He didn't know the crowd had formed. He didn't know he was being recorded. He didn't know his name would soon be on the lips of millions. He just knew. That for the first time in his life. Someone was listening. And he had something to say. Through music. He told his story. A story of a boy the world passed by. A boy no one picked. No one adopted. No one taught. But somehow, he found a way. And now? Now, he was being heard. Right there, in the center of a noisy mall. A blind boy, all alone, played a song no one would ever forget. And in doing so, he silenced a crowd. And opened 1,000 hearts. In less than 5 minutes. Everything had changed. The crowd that had once chuckled, now stood completely still, mesmerized. Some with their mouths open. Some with their phones shaking in their hands. Others, just, quietly crying. But what no one expected was who happened to be standing at the edge of that crowd. Marcus Ellington. A world-class pianist. A man who had played in concert halls across Europe. A name known in music circles from New York to London. He wasn't supposed to be at the mall that day. He wasn't there for an event. He had just dropped in to grab a quick gift for his wife. A quiet afternoon. Nothing special. Until he heard it. A melody, floating through the mall. Beautiful. Raw. Honest. Marcus froze mid-step. He turned his head, trying to follow the sound. And then, like something pulled him by the chest. He walked. He followed the music, weaving through the crowd. And when he saw the piano, he stopped. There, in the middle of that circle of strangers, was a blind boy. His fingers dancing over the keys. His eyes closed. His whole soul, wide open. Marcus didn't speak. Didn't move. He just stood at the edge. And listened. Every note hit something deep. This wasn't just a child playing well. This was storytelling. This was emotion, turned into sound. And when the final note fell into silence, there was a moment, just 1 second, where no one breathed. Then, applause. Loud. Thunderous. The kind of clapping that echoed up to the ceiling and back down again. Eli flinched at first. Startled. He didn't know what that sound meant. He thought maybe he'd done something wrong. Until a voice cut through the noise. A voice filled with warmth. "Son, that was beautiful." Eli turned slightly, unsure. Then Marcus stepped forward from the crowd. People recognized him instantly. Gasps. Whispers. Phones pointing. But he wasn't there for attention. He knelt beside Eli and asked gently, "Who taught you how to play like that?" Eli just smiled. A small, humble smile. And said quietly, "I don't know, sir. I just play what I feel." Marcus blinked. He wasn't often speechless. But in that moment, he had no words. He stood, turned to the crowd, and said, "This boy, he's not just playing music. He's telling stories with it. Real stories." People nodded. Some wiped their eyes. Others just stared at Eli in awe. And then, a woman in the crowd, a young mother holding her toddler, whispered to herself, "People need to see this." She uploaded the video to TikTok. The caption read, "Blind boy at the mall shocks everyone with piano performance loudly crying face musical keyboard #gifted #God's work." At first, it got a few hundred likes. Then a few thousand. By midnight, it was at 500,000. By morning, it had hit over 4 million views. And within 48 hours, 12 million. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, it was everywhere. Music teachers shared it. Celebrities reposted it. Radio stations talked about it. Even news anchors called it a miracle moment. But through it all, Eli remained the same. Quiet. Humble. Still just a boy. Who had something to say. And for the first time, the world was listening. The internet exploded with support. Within hours of the video going viral, Eli's name was everywhere. People from all around the world were talking about him, not just musicians or fans of classical music, but ordinary people, parents, teachers, teenagers, even children. Messages poured into the comments. "Who is this kid? He made me cry, and I don't even like piano. This is what talent looks like before the world ruins it." But they didn't just talk. They took action. Charities reached out, asking how they could help. Music foundations offered instruments, lessons, scholarships. Professional musicians offered to fly in and meet him. Even a few celebrities shared his video and said, "Let's get this boy what he needs." One well-known record label, based in New York, made a public offer. They would fund Eli's full education. all the way through college. No strings attached. And then came the message from a prestigious music school in Boston. They wanted Eli to come for a private audition. A first in their history for someone with no formal training. But that wasn't all. Marcus Ellington, the same pianist who had discovered him in the mall, made a quiet promise to Eli that day. "You've got a gift. And I want to help you grow it." Marcus brought him into his home studio. Taught him about technique, theory, emotion. He didn't change Eli's style, he nurtured it. He said Eli reminded him why he started playing music in the first place. Before long, Eli had not only become Marcus's student. He had become like family. News outlets picked up the story. First, it was the local channels. Then the national ones. Morning shows played clips of his performance with soft music in the background. Hosts wiped their eyes as they read quotes from the crowd that day. YouTube reaction channels, known for critiquing music performances, couldn't believe what they were watching. "This kid has no lessons? Are you kidding me? Bro, I got chills down my spine. He plays with more emotion than half the pros out there." It seemed like the whole world was clapping for Eli now. But you know what? He didn't care about the fame. Not the headlines. Not the numbers. Not the fancy offers or the interviews. All he cared about was the music. That piano at the mall? It had become his voice. And now, he finally had access to one, whenever he wanted. Every day, Eli would wake up early, feel his way into the studio, and sit at the keys. He didn't rush. He didn't perform. He just played. Sometimes joyful. Sometimes sad. Sometimes slow and thoughtful. Sometimes bursting with energy like he couldn't hold it in. For him, it wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about feeling something, and letting that feeling speak. He was still the same boy. Still blind. Still soft-spoken. Still tapping on tables when no one was watching. But now? Now, the world was watching. And more importantly, the world was listening. Eli finally had what he had dreamed of for so long. Not applause. Not attention. But the chance to play. Every single day. They laughed when he sat down. But they stood in silence when he played. Never underestimate someone because of how they look, or what they lack. Because sometimes, the most beautiful gifts are hidden in the most unlikely people. Folded hands. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life stories that inspire.